Hey guys, what's up? I wanted to make a quick video just kind of recapping Unit 7.1 for my students that are not necessarily in class with us during the week, so they can kind of see what we've talked about and to get them ready for the test tomorrow. So if you are in class during the week, if you choose to watch the video, it's a great review, so if you want to kind of check it out. But anyway, so this chapter we started like the anatomy and physiology part of health occupations. One thing that you do need to know is to be able to differentiate or tell the difference between the words anatomy, physiology, and pathophysiology. We talked about how here at the school they offer anatomy and physiology. A lot of times you hear people shorten it and they say, I'm going to take A&P 1, I'm going to take A&P 2, and that kind of stuff. So what do those words actually mean? Anatomy is the study of the structure and form of something. So if you want to study, how many mouth we have in our teeth and what exactly are they for, how many bones are in our hands, that kind of thing, that's the structure and form of something. So that's anatomy. If you're studying physiology, you're studying how or why something works. If you wanted to, figure out how our circulatory system, brings oxygen to the body's cells and eliminates carbon dioxide and waste. That would be the physiology part of anatomy and physiology. If you want to study how the liver, aids in the process of digestion or something like that, that would be physiology. That would be how and why something works. Structure and form, again, is anatomy. Pathophysiology, we broke the word down and we talked about how patho is in there, and patho, think pathogen, think bad stuff. In this case, disease. So if you want to study, the effects of lung cancer on the lungs, or COVID-19 right now, COVID on how COVID affects the lungs and that kind of stuff. Anything that describes how disease affects the body, that's going to be pathophysiology. Then we start talking about parts of a cell and things like that. If you look on Quizlet, or if you look on Google Classroom, I posted the link to Quizlet, which is all the parts of a cell that you will need to know for the unit test that's this week on Wednesday or Thursday. So I definitely look at that Quizlet and kind of go over parts of a cell. We talked about how cells are microscopic, they can perform different functions. One of the short answer possibly may be, to list 4 functions of a cell, which we talked about how they take in food and oxygen, they eliminate waste, they can reproduce themselves, they can, perform specialized functions and that sort of thing. So I would definitely pay attention to the functions of a cell. They're the basic structure and function of all living things. They're microscopic, meaning we cannot see them with our naked eye. You'd have to get a microscope out to see them. There are, trillions of them in the body. They reproduce all the time. They vary in shape and size. They perform different functions. So that's all the different things with a cell. We talked about if you take a bunch of cells and you put them together, that forms the body's tissues. If you take a bunch of tissues and put them together, that forms organs. And if you have a bunch of organs and you put them together, that forms body systems. For example, our stomach, small intestine, large intestine, liver and all that kind of stuff, that's all part of it. All those organs make up the digestive system. So just make sure you remember that. A bunch of cells together form tissues, tissues together form organs, and organs together forms body systems. I'm just kind of flipping through the notes a little bit. Definitely, like I said, look over Quizlet and look over all the parts of a cell. Make sure you recognize the definition about what each part of a cell does. We also talked about how cells reproduce. We said that, our skin cells, our blood cells, our intestinal cells, they reproduce all the time. Like we said, all day, every day. They're constantly reproducing. Our muscle cells do not reproduce but every 4 years or so. Our muscle tissue gets bigger like when we work out and we exercise. That's actually our muscle tissue getting bigger. But our actual muscle cells do not reproduce but every couple of years. You need to make sure that you know that nerve cells that are found in the brain and the spinal cord do not reproduce after birth. Okay, so nerve cells that are in your brain and your spinal cord do not reproduce after birth. What you got is what you got. You're not making any new ones. Therefore, if they're injured or damaged or destroyed, it kind of is what it is. You can't replace them. So just make sure that you look over that. And all this is coming straight from the notes that you got, the fill-in-the-blank notes. Let's see. So your nerve cells don't reproduce after birth. You need to know about stem cells, and you had to read the article on stem cells and why stem cells are important. we talked about in class that stem cells had the ability to transform themselves into any type of specialized cell. So like we said, they have not been assigned a role yet. So they can be transformed into any type of cell. If you read the article, or you should have read the article in stem cells, where they come from can be kind of controversial, because a lot of stem cells come from embryos, specifically that were not used during IVF and that sort of thing. And they can take those cells and actually form an actual human from those cells. And so it's kind of controversial dealing with the embryos. Are they okay to be used for testing and that sort of thing? And then we talked about tissues in class. We talked about what edema is and what dehydration is. Edema is when you have too much tissue fluid. Dehydration is when you don't have enough tissue fluid. So if you have too much tissue fluid, that's edema. You're going to see that word all the time if you get into the healthcare field. Basically means the patient is swollen. So if they put in their chart that they're positive for edema, it means the patient's swollen. They have too much tissue fluid. Dehydrated naturally is the opposite. You don't have enough tissue fluid, and that sort of thing. We used the acronym in class. We learned every cat must nap in order to be able to name the 4 types of tissues. So for tomorrow or Thursday's test, you're going to have to name the 4 types of tissues. And we said every cat must nap. Epithelial. And I'm looking at the board because I still have it written on the board. Every cat must nap is epithelial, connective, muscle, and nerve. So those are the 4 types of tissues that are found in the body. And we talked about how each one has a different role. Epithelial is going to be the one that covers the body's glands. It's what your skin is made up of. The lining of your intestinal and circulatory systems and all that are made of epithelial tissue. We talked about connective tissue and how there's different types of connective tissue. There's soft connective tissue, which is adipose, which is fatty tissue, which is found like on your behind and different things like that as an insulator and to help store heat, and it's a cushion. And we talked about fibrous connective tissue, which is like your tendons and your ligaments. In class, we also talked about hard connective tissue, which would be like your nose, your ears, like your cartilage. This is hard connective tissue. So cartilage and bone. Cartilage is your nose and your ears. Another hard connective tissue is bone, which we said was called osseous tissue. So don't forget that. Osseous tissue is going to be bone. What else did we talk about? We talked about nerve tissue. It's made up of special cells called neurons, right? So nerve tissue is made up of special cells called neurons. We talked about muscle tissue. That's the tissue for power and movement. There's 3 types of muscle tissue that you need to know. So 3 types of muscle tissue. We said that some cats vacuum. Like we just try to think of different things to help us remember. Some cats vacuum, which would be for skeletal, cardiac, and visceral. We said adipose means fatty. We said that visceral tissue is smooth. So something to remember, because if you're in healthcare and taking these medical classes, that's going to pop up a lot too. So adipose is fatty tissue, and visceral means smooth tissue, which we said makes sense. You want smooth tissue. It says in the walls of your respiratory, digestive, and blood vessels and things like that. You don't want tissue that's not smooth, because you want your oxygen, all your blood and all that kind of stuff to run smoothly through your arteries and your veins. So you need visceral or smooth tissue to make that happen. Then we said if we have a bunch of organs and we put them, a bunch of tissues and we put that together, that forms organs. And we talked about different organs just randomly in class. We were naming some organs like heart, lungs, liver, pancreas. Those are all organs. And then the last thing we did was we went over body systems. So I would definitely look over those. If you have a bunch of organs and you put them together, that forms body systems. And if you look at the back page of the notes, it's got them all there. We said if it mentions anything to do with hormones, that's your endocrine system. So you may see something that says, what's body system, controls and regulates the body's hormones. That's the endocrine system. What body system prevents against infection, injury, produces vitamin D, and that kind of stuff. That's your integumentary system. And we said, why name it the integumentary system? You can't, call it the skin system, because that's basically what it is. We looked it up. Integumentary, or an integu, means a covering or the outer shell of something. So it kind of makes sense. Our skin is our big organ in the integumentary system, so that kind of clues you in onto why they call it the integumentary system. We talked about the urinary system. A lot of kids and students don't realize that kidneys are a big part of the urinary system. And so what is the urinary system? Well, it makes urine. Well, how does it make urine? First thing you have to have is your kidneys. Your kidneys are a big filter. So if you see what body system acts as a filter and filters the blood, and gets rid of the body's waste. That's your urinary system. We talked about, looking on my wall over here, I know I'm forgetting some. We talked about the respiratory system, your nose, your pharynx, your larynx, your bronchi, your lungs. That's all part of the respiratory system that naturally take in oxygen and help get rid of carbon dioxide. We talked about the lymphatic system, which also helps fight against an infection, and it helps bring tissue fluid to the body's cells. So if it says anything about which one circulates tissue fluid, that's the lymphatic system. What else did we talk about? I'm just kind of thinking, guys, what else we talked about while we were in class with body systems. With the reproductive system, you got your digestive system. So I would just kind of look over your body systems as well. So hopefully this will kind of help you guys get ready for your test this week. If you're a Monday, Wednesday kid, you'll be taking the test in class with me on Wednesday. And if you're a Tuesday, Thursday kid, you'll be taking the test in class on Thursday. So happy studying. If you have any questions at any time, let me know, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.